Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. I'm Dr. Ava, a medical doctor, and on this channel we'll talk about medical school and how to get through it, but also touching insights like personality, identity, psychology. In today's video, we'll talk about how I could succeed as a medical student, even if medicine was never my dream. I was never the one who dreamed about becoming a doctor since childhood. I never had this idealized figure in my head. I haven't even watched any hospital based shows before applying to med school. So, in fact, I was probably the least emotionally attached to it. So, me succeeding was definitely not because I was the most passionate person in the room. It was because of a few traits I developed way before applying to med school that made me weirdly well suited for it. So, if you feel like you're not passionate enough, this will maybe reassure you. I always thought of myself as more of a creative person. I write poems for the people I love. I like expressing emotion, nature, aesthetics, music. So, medicine was never my whole personality. And because of that, I used to think that I was at a disadvantage. But now I actually think it protected me. So here are the qualities that made me surprisingly resilient in med school, even without being the most passionate. The first one is being comfortable with being average. I never had this expectation put upon myself or a desire to be the best. Growing up, I was constantly in situations where I had to perform competitions, performances from all the scientific subjects to arts. So I got used to knowing that I will not be the best person in the room or I will not win first place if the competition was big enough and it included other top students from other schools. I learned early on that I will sometimes perform worse than I expected. I will not be ready or feel prepared before a performance. People will have opinions about me. I will be judged. And I still had to show up anyway. Quitting was never an option. You had to give yourself a fair chance to prove that you have prepared for this, or at least you tried your best. You never know who you're up against. So if you don't give your best to each performance, you might never actually have those moments where everything aligns for you. You got lucky with the questions, you catch the eye of a judge, and you actually win. And those occasional wins are the ones that not only keep you in the circle and get you nominated to other competitions, but the ones where you learn from what it takes to have a winning performance. I think this is something a lot of people struggle in med school, not because they're not capable, but because they are not used to feeling average or not good enough. But medicine is literally years of that feeling. So if you can tolerate that, you're already ahead. The second quality is a high tolerance for uncertainty. Medicine is not just about intelligence. It's about not knowing whether what you're doing is enough or not. Not knowing whether you will be done with exams tomorrow or you fail and you have to study another 2 weeks. Basically, it's a lot of uncertainty, and I was already used to that. I was used to not feeling ready, not knowing the outcome, showing up and giving my best every single time. So when this feeling showed up in med school, I didn't think of it as something's wrong. It just felt normal. Not being okay with uncertainty gives you anxiety in every field of your life. Let's take relationships. If you're not okay that it's not guaranteed that this person is gonna stay with you for the rest of your life and he's not gonna change, his health is not gonna change, then you're always gonna have anxiety about the future. The one who chooses anxiety suffers twice. You suffer once in the present moment, and then you suffer the second time in the future once the thing you're anxious about actually happens. And what if it doesn't happen at all? Then you just suffered for nothing. You have to have this confidence or faith that whatever happens in the future, it's what's needed for you to become the person you needed to be. This is kind of the mindset that I would start practicing to start being okay with uncertainty. Another highly underrated skill is being okay with being bad at something for a long time. It's not only just not being instantly good from the start, but it's about actually being bad and having feedback that says you're bad at this. A lot of people want to feel confident before they act, but in medicine, you act first. you get evaluated first. Confidence comes much later. You will feel like you don't know enough, you're behind, you're not good at this. And that feeling can last for years. So if you interpret this as failure, you suffer. But if you accept this as part of the process, you survive. The next one is kind of a quality, but it's a skill that you can master. And this is knowing my limits and doing just enough. I always had a sense of what is enough, not less, but also not destroying myself by trying to always do the most. I respected my boundaries early on. And I think a lot of burnout comes from people constantly trying to go beyond their limits because they feel like it's never enough. But in med school, success doesn't come from one perfect effort, it comes from constant, imperfect efforts. This next quality, some of my friends consider this my superpower. And this is having a shield towards criticism. So, as I mentioned this before, I was constantly evaluated growing up as I had to attend competitions in every existing subject. So, I learned early on that instead of taking these as what defines me as a person, I should just look at it as okay, this is part of the environment. And to just move on. That emotional distance is very protective. Falling short in some areas of life is inevitable. You're constantly dividing your energies between different subjects, different responsibilities, and just trying to function as a human being at the same time. So, yes, you can learn from criticism, even if it's just learning about the person giving it, but you can't let it distract you from your bigger goal. For example, if you're prioritizing your hardest subjects just to pass it, you have to accept that your performances in other easier subjects might not be your best. And that's not failure, that's strategy. Or if you had to take a step back from something, this could be like a homework or a project just to take care of your mental health, and that break allowed you to keep going, then you can't let the consequences of that one decision destroy you. Not every shortcoming is a sign that you're failing. Sometimes it's the reason you're able to keep going at all. The next one is not just a quality, but it's a skill you need to master. And this is not tying your self-worth to performance. I never had this identity of I need to be exceptional in medicine. I always just wanted to be good enough to have a stable job, do something meaningful, build a life I enjoy. And ironically, that made me more resilient because I wasn't constantly emotionally crushed by every exam, every failure, every commitment. Less attachment meant less anxiety, and less anxiety allowed for more consistency. And consistency is what really gets you through med school. Identity separation is important because in medicine, it's very easy to blur that line. You're constantly evaluated. Grades, exams, feedback, they start to feel like a reflection of your worth as a person, but they're not. They are just a snapshot of how you performed on one day and under specific circumstances. And building your identity on something that unstable will always make you feel unstable. When your self worth is tied to your performance, every setback feels personal. And that's where the damage happens because you stop taking risks, you avoid challenges, or you overwork yourself just to protect that identity. And ironically, that pressure is what makes you perform worse. So, detaching your identity from your performance is not about caring less. It's about creating that emotional stability that allows you to perform better. I also think that it's highly important to have parts of your life that have nothing to do with medicine. Things that remind you that you are more than your degree. For me, that was creativity, nature, relationships, movement, things where there is no grade, no evaluation, or no pressure to perform. Because if the only place where you exist is within a system where you're constantly judged, you start to forget who you are without that system. And the last quality might be the most important of them all. This is being able to disconnect and live outside of medicine. When I was done studying, I was done. When I was resting, socializing, living, medicine did not define my worth in that moment. I could leave it behind. And I think this is what prevents burnout long term. Being able to disconnect is what allows you to come back stronger. When you give your mind space, you step into a different environment, different conversation, different energy. You reset, and that reset is what makes consistency possible. Not pushing endlessly, but knowing when to step back so you can return. If you're somebody that feels like you're not passionate enough, not obsessed enough, not perfect enough for medicine, I actually don't think that's your disadvantage. It might just be the thing protecting you. Because what gets you through this path is not constant motivation. It's emotional resilience. And a lot of that comes from how you relate to yourself, not how much you love the subject. If this resonated with you, I really like to hear your experience. What are something you struggled with in medicine or what helped you survive? And if you're interested in more videos about the psychology behind studying, identity, and life in medicine, you can stick around.